Hello, thank you for joining me. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Schuyler Instructional Model. The Schuyler Instructional Model can be found on our CIA website, which you can get to by going to the Schuyler Community Schools website, district offices, curriculum instruction, and then this link here to this curriculum instruction and assessment website. You have all of these things available to you, but today we're focusing on the Schuyler Instructional Model. Now, our Schuyler Instructional Model is based on the Focused Teacher Evaluation Model from Marzano Resources. You can read through this on your own. I'm not going to go through all of it, but some important pieces of it and do include what it is, why do we have it. The biggest, most important thing is that this is giving you a common language for instruction. So to that end, I'm going to look at some of the definition of keywords and phrases. The first keyword there, that learning goal. Learning goal is a long-term instructional objective. So it's what you're going to do over the long term. If we're doing this based on the standards, it's going to be the overall standard, the level of the standard that we're going to get to. However, a learning target is what we're going to be expecting you to see, to post in your classroom, that we would see that in your classroom when we come in for observations. We're seeing that learning target. What is it that you're going to do in the short term, today? This is today's learning, not a long-term learning. It really should not last more than a day or two, depending, sometimes things take a little bit longer than you expect them to, and you need to repeat it again tomorrow or do more with it tomorrow. But really, a learning target should be short-term. What is happening in today's lesson? Keep going on with that, the desired effect. What we're talking about in there is what should we see out of the lesson? What should we see? What is the intended result of this? Monitoring means the teacher is monitoring for the effectiveness of their lesson or the strategy. If I'm using a strategy and I'm expecting students to do this, I'm going to monitor what the students are doing. I'm going to make sure that all of the students are getting this information. Scaffolding then, that's just a progression. It's very purposeful. It gets to the progression of supports for students to get from the low levels to the higher levels. Extending means taking actions that you use to take students beyond if they are already there. A performance scale. Again, we'll have another video that'll talk about performance scales because this is something that we've been really using in this district, where it's a continuum that articulates distinct level of knowledge and skills related to a specific standard. So we have the standard level and then all of the targets that you're going to be teaching to get to that standard level. We'll see the performance scale as being something, and you might also hear it be called a proficiency scale. But a performance scale is like a ladder that students are going to use to get from ground floor stuff that they don't know how to do at all to get up to next level, and to get up to the level of the standards. On the other hand, a rubric is different in that is just based on one assignment. It's basically telling you how students can score on that one assignment. What are all the expectations in that assignment? And then simply SLWR is just speaking, listening, writing, and reading. You just might see that in here. So it's just important to point it out to you. That's really a part of our EL processes and programs. So how is this based? How is this built? So there's the overall area, the element itself, planning standards-based lessons and units, and then a focus statement for you to look at. And then when we talked about that desired effect, what would actually see coming out of this, and then things that you can make sure that you are doing, that as you're making your plans, you can kind of look it through here and say, have I done this or have I not done this? We have also then gone in and added in things for your multilingual learners, EL students. How can we make sure that we're meeting those? What are some strategies that we can use to make sure we're meeting the needs of our EL students? So I'm going to point out one here that's identifying critical content from the standards, because that is very important, very necessary, and it is something that your building principals should be scoring a lot of in your building. And you should have a score on this at least one time, but really more than that. You will learn more and some other things about how to do instructional targets, learning targets, how to build them, those sorts of things. But this kind of reminds you of some of this stuff about referencing learning targets, using visual cues. This is something that I do a lot. I will even say this, hey, I've repeated this statement 3 times now. Make sure that you write it down, circle it, and put an arrow because it's important. So that's identifying the critical content. A closure activity, something that does that. That ties it back to your learning target. So you always make sure that you're focused on the critical content. And again, for our EL students, okay, so now here's how to do this. Make sure you're using some very explicit vocabulary instruction. Don't assume kids know what words mean. But maybe you can identify a language goal along with it. So we know that my learning today is going to be about adding 2-digit numbers. And so that's my target for the day. We're going to add 2-digit numbers with, what are the language learning that students would need to know with that? So at least kind of think about that in your head. What are some phrases students kids are going to need to know, so that you make sure you highlight those phrases? All right. Now, the other thing that's in here towards the end, actually the second to last page, does give us some additional EL resources. So if you're struggling and you're not sure what to do, you can be looking in this as well. That's another place to look. So that's our overall instructional model. It does have 23 different elements to it. But you will also be receiving, and this is important that you have, this Essential Elements Quick Reference Guide. With this Essential Elements Quick Reference Guide, we have taken 9 of these elements and we said these are our most important ones. We want everybody using them. We're going to highlight them. We're going to talk about them. And we're going to make sure all of our teachers are doing these things. So that's why I talked about the identifying critical content. So it has the same information in it, except that it does also include an impact on student achievement. So we just know, hey, this is why this is important. So when students can explain why content is important, it really will help them relate it to the learning goal. So this is also something that is available to you and that you would have, and you just want to make sure that you're examining these elements. Something that's very important for everybody to keep in mind and remember and know is that when we're talking about this, we're going to talk about using engagement strategies. These are not checklists. This is not okay, I did this, check, now I have to do this, check, now I have to do this. So within a lesson, you're not going to do all of these. You may only do one of these. You may only do something. But do something from this as you're creating your plans for the day. Make sure you're looking at this and saying, okay, how can I make sure that I'm keeping students engaged in my classroom? Well, you know what, this really makes sense right now, that at this point I'm going to use physical movement. So I'm going to ask my students to get up, do a stand up, hand up, pair up, and get together with somebody. Or we're going to have different stations across the room, and they're going to go to those stations. So using that physical movement helps keep students engaged. As always, we will close these with, if you have any questions, please reach out to your building principal or to me, and we will do what we can to get you the information that you need.